Hello, welcome to a very special episode of the Crickether Weekly.
I'm the dad.
I'm the daughter.
I'm the husband.
And I'm the wife. And this is the Crickether Naughty Child crossover episode. And we are really excited to have Richard and Polly joining us on the Crickether Weekly. It's a bit cold, it's a bit chilly, and we've just watched the last stages of the third England-India ODI at Lord's, which ended slightly controversially in what was formerly would have been known as a Mankads incident, but I believe that we're now meant to call a run out at the non-striker's end by Keightley. So let's talk about the match. Shall we start at the beginning with that spell by Kate Cross? Polly?
Yeah, I thought Kate Cross bowled really well. I mean, it was her first time at Lord's, I think, playing. I know she just looked so comfortable, really. And I don't know, we were saying earlier, I think it was kind of meant for her to play at Lord's. It suited her really well, and her bowling was fantastic, and to get Shafali Verma again, I just thought was a perfect way for her to kind of wrap up her summer.
Yeah, it was great to see. Sid?
Yeah, she really made use of the slope at Lord's. She was able to get the ball to move around off the seam, and so it was going away from the left-hander, it was coming into the right-hander, and three great bowlers' wickets, two bowled and an LBW. She did get a little bit lucky with her fourth wicket, which was just like the worst ball she'd probably bowled in the entire series, but that happens sometimes, and Smriti Mandana was obviously like very, very cross with herself. She almost looked like can I review that on the grounds that I was a complete idiot to play that shot? But yeah, no, taking nothing away from Kate Cross, she was marvellous. I do think that potentially England kind of let it get away a little bit after that, so they put themselves in a really good position at the power play, didn't they? But then going forward, they let Smriti get on to 50, and ultimately they let Dipti also get through to 50 when they perhaps could have kind of trodden on the neck a bit more. What do we think?
Yeah, that is actually what Kate Cross reflected in the press conference just now. She was very much trying to steer the conversation away from the Keightley incident, and apparently a lot of the talk in the dressing room was that wasn't the moment at which we lost the match. We did kind of let them get away from us in the first innings. So India eventually got to 169, and then England had to come out and chase it down, and I think that we all thought it was going to be relatively straightforward, didn't we, Richard?
Yeah, had we been offered that in advance of the game, bowl them all out, 169 in 45 overs, you'd have taken it, absolutely. And yeah, we fancied our chances of overtaking that. I thought maybe take your time, 40 overs, 45 overs, we'll knock those runs off, no problem whatsoever. The key thing was to make a good start, not lose early wickets, and we did that to an extent. So the opening pair, Tammy Beaumont, spent a long time not getting very many runs, but Emma Lamb looked good, and they put on about 30 for the first wicket, and I was thinking if they can get up to 50, then this game is done and dusted. However, they didn't.
So what do you think went wrong for them?
Well, what seemed to happen throughout the game, and I can't say why this is, but it was apparent in India's innings, and we referred to it with Kate Cross's bowling, it was definitely apparent in England's innings. We're here in London, and lots of players were playing down the Bakerloo line when the ball was coming down the Jubilee line. There seemed to be this playing and missing a straight one, or the ball was somehow deviating up the slope, or some very, very clever bowling, which was deceiving world-class batters and getting them out. So loads of people were out bowled. The other thing that came across, I think, was quite clever captaincy by Harmanpreet Kaur. So three of the England batters were caught by Harmeet Deol, who's the best fielder in the Indian side. But she was in three different places when she caught those people. So clearly that was a trap. And so I think Freya Kemp, Amy Jones, and one other I can't remember, were out caught by her. Clearly there were plans being executed, and there was a shrewdness in the captaincy of the Indian side that maybe we didn't quite have on the English side, and a shrewdness that maybe manifested itself later in the game as well.
Shall we talk about that as we're on it? What have we made of Amy Jones as captain? Polly, can I pass over to you?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, really. Obviously, very, very last minute for her. And I think she has done an all right job. And I say that in kind of two minds. I think, she hasn't been the best captain, but I don't think anyone expected her to be. I don't think there was very much expectation going into the series that she would, I suppose, carry herself in the same way that Heather Knight does. And obviously, it's Heather Knight's job and she always knows she's going to do that. But Amy Jones, it was kind of sprung upon her. And, previously she captained Birmingham Phoenix in the first edition of the 100. And to some extent, that's probably quite good, I suppose, good practice, because that was a competition when they were kind of going in blind, had no idea what to expect. And so actually that unknown and that last minute kind of stress sort of thing, I suppose maybe would have helped her in this series. But at the same time, Heather Knight's kind of irreplaceable in that sense of, she knows how to carry herself, do interviews, she knows the team inside out and everything they need. And I think England definitely have missed that. But I think, as far as stepping into the role last minute, I think Amy Jones has, I suppose, done well to get through the series.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add to that, Sid?
No, I think that's a really important point, that she was faced with a very, very difficult task, and it wasn't just that she came into it at the last minute. It was that she's trying to kind of work with a team that have been under Heather for a long time, and they've built up years of plans. And Heather and Lisa Keightley have been working together for the last 3 years, and they've built up all of those ways of working, all of the plans, all of the knowledge that they've built out, and then suddenly Amy's expected to take that on, and it really is a lot to ask. And at the end of the day, she's got through this series. She hasn't quit out. She hasn't gone, I can't do this. She's stood up, she's done the job, she's stood up at the press conferences, even though she clearly doesn't enjoy doing that. So credit to her for doing that. But I do think that if Heather Knight doesn't come back for the next series, that England have definitely need to look again perhaps at that. We saw Heather Knight this evening. She was at Lord's today, and we saw her walking back, and she seemed to be walking fine, but whether or not that translates obviously into being able to actually professional athlete run fine is a different question, and so it still remains to be seen whether she's going to come back for the West Indies series. Obviously the last thing England will want is for her to come back to the West Indies series and then injure herself again and then not be able to go to the World Cup, so they might have to kind of take a view on that. But if they do, then England really need to perhaps find a different alternative. Who that will be, well, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that's the issue, isn't it? There hasn't been any succession planning. The bit of my piece that got axed just now, filing for The Guardian, because obviously of the big controversy with the Mancad at the end, kind of overshadowed some of what I was trying to reflect on the overall summer and the overall series. But I was trying to say that actually I think that whoever the new coach is going to find it quite difficult to do anything except carry on working with Heather Knight. But really the two of them have got to sit down and think about that succession planning very seriously. Because otherwise you are going to be left in a position where this could happen again, and that's really been a very difficult position, as you were saying, Polly, for Amy Jones to be put in, to be honest. It's not something that she would have chosen, and it's not really been ideal for England. Shall we though talk about our reactions kind of live, and we're about an hour and a half on from the actual incident at the end with Dipti Sharma doing the run out at the non-strikers end. What did we make of it kind of in real time? Richard?
Well, it's clearly in the laws of the game. It's totally allowed. But there's another thing called the spirit of cricket, and I think it was really interesting being there and seeing it happen, because I was absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and there were India fans around us started to celebrate when that happened, and then when the review came in and it was confirmed as being out, and then I guess just a sense of deflation. And I suppose as a member of the paying public that I'd been robbed a little bit, that there was a really amazing fight back by Charlie Dean and Freya Davis, that there were 16 runs now needed, thinking, can we get it to single figures? We're going to be having a really, really exciting finish here, and it felt like that suddenly was gone. So India acted completely within the rules of the game, but somehow it feels like the thought I had is that women's cricket has kind of crossed the Rubicon, that this game, which has been sort of amateur and friendly, or I've perceived it as that, is actually now it's about winning, It's about being professional and doing the job and having an explanation for what you've done and executing your plans and being shrewd and all of those things. And I don't feel great about that, but it's in the rules of the game. They've done absolutely nothing wrong, but I feel saddened by it.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well, to be honest, because we were all saying just now that we can't recall having seen this happen before in women's cricket. It probably has. I'm sure Hypercourse, in response to this, will dig out some examples, but we can't remember having seen it. And actually seeing it live and being in the ground, I think, is quite different to seeing it on the TV even. There was certainly a real boo that went up around the ground when that happened, and I was quite struck by that. And that was the thing that for me was quite sad, because it really felt like what had been a very kind of positive game with both sides, like when England did the Guard of Honour for Goswami when she came out to bat, and Kate Cross said, we planned that, we were going to do that whatever situation she came out into, we knew we wanted to do that for her. And so with that great spirit on both sides, and then suddenly the whole thing just descended into the same crowd who'd been, but both sides willing Goswami on to take wickets. Actually, even the English fans, it felt like, suddenly no. It really descended into kind of more tribalism, I suppose. It was really kind of more England v India. What did you make of it, Polly?
Yeah, I think similar to kind of both those reactions. I think for me, it was more the fact that the day had been about the spirit of cricket, I think, and that was shown through obviously England doing the Guard of Honour. And I think it really felt like the end of an era today. I think obviously it being the last international game of the season, Goswami retiring, obviously the end of Lisa Keightley being coach of England, and I thought there were so many things that were being finalised today, and to have a game which could have really gone, was going down to the wire, it was going to be so close, I suppose spoiled. I was really my first reaction was anger. I was really angry about it. But the more I think about it, I'm just like, why? Why was that necessary? And I think, the reaction from obviously the England dressing room, but also Charlie Dean crying. I thought, this could have actually been a really important moment for her, and she was so close to that half century, and I think to almost rob someone slightly unfairly of that. And I personally don't particularly like the way of, I suppose, getting people out in that way, but I think especially to do it in that manner and in that circumstance, I just thought wasn't right. And I think as seeing after the game when the India team were walking round the boundary, obviously to have this big send off for Goswami and people were booing, I thought that's really sad, because a lot of people are going to remember this game for the way it ended rather than remembering it for what it should have been.
That's a really good point. I think, to be honest, we're entitled to feel that anger, and in a way that's good, because it shows that we care. And I think there's this perception sometimes of women's cricket fans and women's sports fans that we're not as emotionally attached, and that we're kind of we just go like, oh, we'll just applaud that, oh, that was nice. But actually it's okay to be angry, and it's okay for me and you to be tweeting and lots of angry Indians to be replying going, oh, you're talking absolute nonsense, because it shows that people are really engaging. And there's no way that 5 or 10 years ago you would have had people angry on Twitter about Indian women's cricket, so that's really exciting actually, in a way, if we're going to take a positive out of all of this. Sid, have you got anything to add about the Dipti incident?
Yeah, obviously, as Richard says, it's definitely within the laws of the game. The laws of the game are actually designed. They're a little bit more subtle than sometimes people think, and the law is designed to attempt to prevent you from effectively what you might term fake bowling. So what the law is saying is that what we don't want you doing is pretending that you've bowled the ball and then going back and taking the wicket. So the laws of the game say that the striker has to be out of their ground at the moment that you would have delivered the ball. And it's absolutely true that Charlie Dean was out of her ground at the moment that Dipsy would have been delivering the ball. But it really skirted the line of what you might call fake bowling. And because Charlie Dean clearly felt the ball had been bowled, she had no idea. She was looking down there, waiting for the ball to be struck. And at that point, it becomes, I think, a little bit awkward. The other thing I'd like to know is how many times could Dipsy herself have been Mankaded in her innings? If it was 0, I will eat this microphone live on air during the next episode.
Be careful. Be careful what you promise there, Sid. I'm sure somebody will write in and say no, she couldn't possibly have been.
Yeah, no. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Thanks for that, Sid. So we were also going to talk a bit, it just feels like that incident right at the end has kind of been such a big thing that it's knocked out what we were going to actually talk about. But I think we were going to talk about the challenges for the next England coach, weren't we? Whoever that might be. I believe that applications close tomorrow, so there's still time. Actually, by the time this is released, there isn't still time. So any thoughts on what the biggest challenge is going to be for the next England coach? Does anyone want to come in here?
Yeah, so I think kind of the biggest one is the fact that England are in a bit of a transition at the moment. Obviously with younger players coming in, less experienced players, and obviously I think that's a really positive thing for England going forward, but you're experiencing the teething problems at the moment, and actually these players aren't going to be at their best at the moment, and you've got to allow them to develop. So I think that's going to be kind of a big one. But then also with the players who are kind of on the fringes and have been left out, you think about Tammy Bowen with the T20 side, who's been left out with younger players taking her place. How do you manage those players, and how do you kind of I suppose work with the team wider than kind of the starting 11, think about the bigger squads? And we've seen kind of England picking different teams for T20s and 50 overs a bit more separately recently, and actually will the next England coach want to separate that even more? And I think that kind of could be a challenge. And obviously with the captaincy situation at the moment, that's another big one, because it's something slightly out of the coach's control whether Heather's ready to be back, and so it's just something they've got to manage. But yeah, I think whoever gets the job is going to have kind of a lot of big things to do.
Anything to add to that, Richard?
It seems to me there's a generational shift going on. Really exciting time for the women's game, and those developments have caused this whole influx of very young players to come in. But you can't build a side full of young players. You won't win anything with kids, as they say. And so it's getting that balance and that transition absolutely right. And I'm not sure that we're at that place and who that captain is that can bring it forward. If you think about what the role of England cricket captain is, it's massive. The amount of stuff that's involved in that is huge, and possibly it's beyond one person. Only 2 people have done it in the last 20 years, and they've both been exceptional leaders, and those people maybe don't come around very often.
Just been video bombed by Lauren Bell's mum and dad. Lovely, charming. I'm sure they'll enjoy their non-appearance on screen. Sid, what do you think are the big challenges for the future England coach? And I suppose thinking as well as about Lisa Keightley's reign in relation to that as well, and what she done well and what she done that the new coach might want to do differently.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the thing is that Lisa Keightley, has she been a success? Has she been a failure? That she has had a reasonable amount of success up until a couple of months ago. She had a very similar win percentage to Mark Robinson. Win percentage has obviously gone down a bit in the last few weeks, but it hasn't gone down vastly. But I think the key thing is that we're still nowhere near Australia. I think that we're all sitting here going, Australia are going to turn up next summer, and if India have beaten us here, and India have well beaten England, what are Australia going to do to us? The new coach is almost certainly going to come in and have to cope. The big challenge is going to be coping with losing an Ashes series, because that's almost certainly, it feels like, going to happen. So they have to come in and deal with that, and still kind of manage the team through that process in order to get to the place where we want to be, where the team are more mature, and where these players in 4 or 5 years' time can be the ones that win an Ashes series.
Great, okay. So let's wrap up then by actually thinking ahead to tomorrow's match at Lord's, which is going to be the 3rd final of the Rachael Heyhoe Flint Trophy, and it's exactly the same 2 teams again. I'm sure that Polly is very sad about that, because obviously Sparks unable to reach the final, and most recently Stars lost. They were beaten in the playoff by Vipers rather comprehensively. So we have tomorrow here at Lords, Southern Vipers against the Northern Diamonds in the final. So shall we talk about the Diamonds first and the journey that they've had to get here? Sid?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the Diamonds deserve to be where they are. They've topped the table. They're the team that won all their games. And it's not just that, the Diamonds, don't forget, have had players missing as well. They can argue they've had Catherine Brunt and Nat Stiver missing. They've had other players missing through injury. Jenny Gunn hasn't played that much. Beth Langston hasn't played that much. But what they've had is a couple of quality batsmen up top, batters, excuse me. So Lauren Winfield Hill has had an absolutely fantastic domestic season. If you remember the season she had in the 100, well, she's basically had an even better season for Diamonds in the regionals competition. And Holly Armitage as well has been really good this season. Bess Heath has been another player that's really had a breakthrough season with the bat. Unfortunately hasn't got the opportunities that we'd like to have had with the gloves, but hopefully they will come in the future. And then they've had some great bowling to back that up. So they've had, Katie Levick has been particularly impressive again, and Lindsay Smith as well has been really key. Lindsay Smith's had a really interesting season actually, because she's been opening the batting and it's been a total disaster. But it doesn't matter, because she's been brilliant with the ball. She's taken loads of wickets and she's been really economical. So her bowling has been a really important part of the kind of the Diamonds puzzle.
Okay, so Polly, what have Diamonds got that Sparks haven't? Sorry, that was a bit mean.
Don't want to get myself in trouble. I think the thing about Diamonds that I've been really impressed with this year is their consistency. They've consistently got quite high totals that other teams haven't, and I think that's really stood out to me. But then they haven't just got a big total; they've backed it up with the ball, or if they've bowled first, they've bowled really well and backed it up with the batting, which I don't think any other team has done to the same extent. I think you mentioned about quite a similar team. They have had quite a similar starting 11, but similar to other teams as well, they've brought in younger players and they've taken those risks. At the start of the season, they brought in Emma Marlowe, who's 18, I think, and kind of took a chance with her, and that's been really successful. So actually, I don't think they're doing that much that's different to other teams. I think they've just been more successful and consistent with that, and it's hard to kind of place your finger on what's working well, but I think they do have the advantage of having someone like Lauren Winfield Hill, who obviously hasn't been playing for England but has that experience and has the skill, and who's just been remarkable this season. And so yeah, I mean, I've been impressed with her, but also they've had Stair Callis, who's stepped up this season as well, and their batting order, there's so much depth with it. I mean, even Katie Levick, did some impressive batting the other day, and she's number 11, and so I think throughout their squad they've got something really good going on.
Are we meant to say Stair Callis, friend of the pod at this point?
This is where we mentioned friend of the pod, yeah.
Let's also now talk about Vipers. Now, Richard, you need to be a little bit careful what you say here, because if you say anything particularly negative, then Sid might get a bit arsey with you later. But yeah, what have Vipers done well, do you think?
Well, we really dislike the Vipers, like most cricket fans, because they just win far too much. But I think that the thing with Vipers is Charlotte Edwards, and we talked about shrewdness. She is a very shrewd leader of that group, and one of the key things that she did, I think back in March, April time, was suddenly pulled a rabbit out of the hat and said, Anya Shrubsole, she's going to come and play for us and be our coach. So she's doing what England haven't done. She's set up a kind of succession there, but also brought in an international standard bowler who isn't going to play in any international cricket during the year and can commit to Vipers and mentor young fast bowlers at the Vipers. And they have got really good young players, young fast bowlers coming through. Freya Kemp, who we watched today, being a really, really good example of that. So you've got experience and you've got development of young players happening at the same time, and that's the secret of success for Vipers, and that's why we dislike them so much.
It's really interesting you say that, because I was actually saying to Syd something similar earlier today, that actually what we've seen is that Freya Kemp has been thrown into this England team and hasn't had that same mentoring, I think, because players like Nat Siver and Catherine Brunt haven't been there against India to do that mentoring role, and that's why she's been able to perform so well at the Vipers, is because of Anya Shrubsole actually doing that. And so it's probably a little bit unfair to expect a 17-year-old to be able to come in to international cricket and set her own fields and work out when she's going to bowl her overs and things like that, things that Amy Jones has perhaps been falling down on a little bit, and there haven't been those senior bowlers around to kind of pat her on the back and say, actually, this is what we think you should be doing. So I think that's why she struggled for England a little bit recently, and why, by contrast, when she plays for the Vipers, she does really well. I think it's going to be really interesting to see who, if anyone, England release to play in the final tomorrow. Will they release Lauren Bell, who didn't play today?
We should have asked her mum and dad. They were just here.
That's a really good point. Can we get them back? I think that we would be hoping that they would, because you would hope that the ECB are kind of on board with getting players to play as much cricket as possible, and it's the last day of the season, so what harm can it do, hey? Shall we wrap up by giving a prediction for tomorrow? Syd, I'm going to start with you, because your prediction is the most predictable prediction.
Yeah, I think the Diamonds are going to win.
What?
I think the Diamonds are going to win.
What?
I think we've done this one.
You don't think that?
I do. No, I think the Diamonds deserve to win. Diamonds have been the best team this season, and they deserve the win.
I've just remembered that you always say that, but then you actually secretly want Vipers to win.
That's a different matter.
Good. Okay, Polly, who's going to win tomorrow?
I think Diamonds are going to win, and I hope Diamonds win. I don't want Vipers to see. I don't want to see Vipers take the title again.
That's fair enough. Richard?
Well, if you listen to the most recent episode of the Naughty Child podcast featuring Katie Levick, we accused her and the Diamonds of being serial chokers. But I predict that tomorrow will be the day they stop choking and they lift the trophy.
Okay, well, I think then it's only fair for me to take the other side and say that I think Vipers are going to win. I'm sorry, they've just got so much depth, and I do think that it's likely that Lauren Bell will be released to play for them, and I think that will make all the difference. But we'll see. Thank you so much for doing the crossover episode. It's been a lot of fun, and we should do it again. Wrap up there. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.